Just today we heard that some Ukrainian paratroopers, I think, were killed in battle. The number initially was 10. I think it's probably more than that now, and it could well be that this clash, this conflict, is continuing. What is going on? It's very interesting that with Gaza receiving the intense media coverage it does, Ukraine has been rather forgotten. Syria, where the atrocities are appalling, also has been largely neglected. But Marko Stech is a Ukrainian expert and academic, and we're chatting before the show. You said that what we heard about this morning, this battle, I suppose it is a battle, is still going on.
It's still going on. There's a very good reason why this battle at the city of Shakhtarsk is taking place. For the past 5 days, the Ukrainian army has been implementing it actually quite successfully as sort of a difficult maneuver. They were trying to divide the territory controlled by the terrorists into two and to cut off the main city, Donetsk, from the supply lines that go from Russia. And they're very successful. At the same time, they're trying to secure the site of the tragedy of the downing of the MH17 flight. Right. Which actually they have succeeded today. A number of scores of international experts have been working at the site today, and they have almost cut off this the city, the main city of the Donetsk region from the supply. And Shakhtarsk is the last sort of stronghold, the last place where the terrorists still have some power. So they are fighting fiercely for it.
How many casualties do you think have been inflicted on the Ukrainians?
Well, it is the last number that I've heard was 20 plus. Right. However, there were a number of units that were not accounted for. That, I mean, this is the middle of the battle, and you don't go and count so exactly. We will probably know in 2-3 days.
Right. How much will Russia allow? I mean, surely they will play lots of games with people who are fighting for them vicariously, but eventually they will step in. If they think it's going too badly for them, they will intervene.
They are intervening already.
Yeah.
I mean, this is considered somehow in much of the Western media as if it was some sort of a civil war or an insurrection. It is not.
That's
it is a war. Yes. It is a war actually between Russia. It's an aggressive war on the part of Russia. The question is what kind of methods they're using. They're using a new methods of war in which they don't bring the entire army. They bring the number of, they have from the very beginning not only led the entire movement, they organized it, they funded it, they supplied it with arms. All of the main commanders are actually Russian special security services. By now, from what we can tell, from the information we are getting from that zone, is that over 50% of the actual fighting soldiers, separatists, are Russian citizens, and most of them are either Russian special forces or the mercenaries from various regions, primarily Chechnya and Ossetia.
Well, what happens next? Because, as I mentioned earlier, there is a certain cloak of digression.
Yes.
There is an extraordinary, I mean, it amazes me that, I mean, as bad as it is, 15 people will die in Gaza, which is a tragedy, but there'll be 1,000 dead in Syria, there'll be atrocities in Ukraine, and there's hardly any coverage of it.
Well, it is I believe that it is an extremely important conflict internationally happening right now in Ukraine. Russia is trying to re-establish its hegemony in the region, and of course it's going very far to do that. Now, what they will do next is a very, very sort of curious, but at the same time a little scary situation, because they're obviously losing.
Yeah.
Putin expected that his just simply bringing a few commanders will actually create an insurrection in Ukraine, in eastern and southern Ukraine. It didn't. It did the opposite. Actually, it consolidated people against Russia. But so when he's losing on ground, and I don't think that he can afford to lose, he is developing different tactics. And of course, one tactic was, I don't know if you are aware, this weekend there were 2 assassinations on mayors of cities in Ukraine, very far from the conflict. One in the city of Lviv, in the west. Luckily he survived, but the other one was killed in the city of Kremenchuk in central Ukraine.
But there was another just about a month ago. I mean, this policy has been in place for some time.
So this is basically implementing a terrorist activity throughout Ukraine. So this is probably another tactic that he may, and of course there is always a possibility of actually attack because he is amassing army on the border. And I am certainly not privy to his plans, but it would be a very, very, very dangerous and bloody conflict.
Britain has sent in some troops for training exercises nearby, 1,500 or so. It's a gesture. Others are making gestures. But I'm just pessimistic about the United States actually being bold enough to say to the Russians, you don't go any further. I don't think we're going to see that.
Well, we haven't seen it so far. So I'm not sure how the developments, how the situation will develop. I think still that the tragedy with the passenger plane being shot down so obviously as a terrorist act changed the situation and maybe will cause a wake-up call for some governments.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.